All right, I guess we'll go ahead and get started. Um, Want to welcome everybody to the June edition of the Kentucky Monthly Climate Perspective on Drought and Hydrologic Conditions. My name is Chip Zimmer. I'm with the Kentucky Division of Water. I just want to welcome you to today's webinar. Before we get started, this webinar series is presented by the Kentucky Climate Center at Western Kentucky University in partnership with the National Integrated Drought Information Systems, otherwise known as NIDIS, and in coordination with the Midwest Drought Early Warning System. Production and delivery of this webinar reflects the contributions of many partners committed to serving the needs of the Commonwealth and of Kentucky and its people, and that includes Jerry Grotsky, the state climatologist down at the Climate Center, and also Matt Dixon at the UK Ag Weather Center. Our next webinar, a slight change. Normally we're on the first Thursday of the month, but that is July 4th. So we are pushing it back. So next month it will be July 11th, the second Thursday of the month at 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Actually, I guess that should be East Standard Time, 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. This webinar is being recorded, and it's also being live streamed on the Kentucky Climate Center's YouTube channel, and it should be available shortly afterwards to watch the recording. So, oh, and I should go back and say, this picture in the background there was taken by me just outside of Georgetown earlier in the month. The auroras, which are something that I never dreamed of seeing in Kentucky, especially like that. So it was, I'm sure, hopefully a lot of you saw them. They were actually seen in every state in the country, including Hawaii, which is pretty amazing. I saw reports that it was a once in a 500-year storm, so solar storm. So pretty amazing to see. I'm 45, and within a span of a month, I saw my first total eclipse and my first aurora. So that was a pretty crazy month. So just going ahead, the outline for like we do every month, we're going to talk about recent conditions, impacts, outlooks, and finish up the summary and questions and discussion. Pictures on the left, the top one is the Butler County Mesonet Station. Normally you should be looking at a field, and instead you are looking at the Green River, just a little bit out of its banks there. And then on the bottom, that is the Clark County Mesonet. You can see it, a parting storm, and a rainbow being left behind there. Nice view there. And that was from early in the month, May 6th. So it's been a little wet recently. This is the past 7 days. You can see pretty good rain amounts, especially kind of east central Kentucky. Looking at 1.5, almost 2 inches rain in that area, which is a good thing. It's probably been the driest part of the state. But also some 1, 2, almost 3 inch totals down in west central Kentucky, which they do not need any more rain in there. And also in far western Kentucky, 3 and also 4.7 inches down there in Fulton County, Town of Hickman. Looking at the past 2 weeks, you can see some huge rainfall amounts. West central Kentucky again, 6, 7, almost 8 inch, actually over 8 inches of rain there in Grayson County. And then there along the Mississippi, 6 inches, 9 inches of rain. And then lesser amounts as you get into eastern and northern Kentucky, but still you're talking 1.5 to 3, 4 inches rain in 2 weeks, which is a lot of water. And then we bump it out to 30 days, and we really pick up on, we've had 2 really big rainfall systems and then several smaller ones mixed in. And you can see just the huge numbers down there in past 30 days. 12, 10, 12, 14 inches of precipitation. And then, like I said, if you go up to northern and eastern Kentucky, you're seeing 3, 4 inches of rainfall. Still normal is about 4 inches, just over 4, 4.25 inches of rain. So those places that look like they're quote unquote dry are actually about normal or slightly above normal. So just been a lot of rain the past in May. Um, go out to 60 days. Um, Still those big numbers showing up, yeah, to almost 20 inches of precipitation in 2 months in west central Kentucky. And again, even in eastern Kentucky, still looking at 8, 9, 10 inches of precipitation. So April was wet in the beginning of April, then dry the second half of April. So then May kicked in and really got us going. And you go out to 90 days, and this includes March, which was a little on the dry side. So, but you still talking 20 inches of rain out here in west central Kentucky, and still 10 to 12 inches out in northern and eastern Kentucky. So, all in all, precipitation wise, looking pretty good. Looking at the 30 to 60 day, 30, 60, 90-day precipitation, you can see here up in the top left corner, we're talking about places in southern and western Kentucky that have seen 200 to 300% of normal precipitation. And this did not include yesterday's precipitation. So up there in eastern Kentucky, east central Kentucky, but they're just a little bit below normal. I mean, you're talking 90, 95% of normal. They did get some precipitation, so they're probably green now. If you go out to the 60 and 90 days, you can see still most places are wet, and the few places that we see a little bit of yellow showing up are just below normal. So all in all, really good shape. The state as a whole in May averaged 7.86 inches of precipitation, which is almost 3 inches above normal, and it's the sixth wettest May on record. And if you just take the Western Climate Division, which I believe is just about Owensboro to Todd County West, I believe, somewhere in that general vicinity, they averaged 10.4 inches of precipitation, which is almost 5.5 inches above normal, and it was the wettest May on record for that climate district. And for the spring, we climatological spring runs from March through May. So the state averaged 15.22 inches of precipitation, which is just over an inch and a half above normal, and comes out as the 36th wettest on record. So May really helped us out, pulling us up above average, which is a good thing to see. Looking at temperatures, we were above average. Looking at the top left there, that's the total average temperature for the month of May. And that's been a trend pretty much every month for going back for several years, seems like. And if you look over at on the right side, on the top is the departure from mean for minimum temperature. So you can see that is where a lot of the above average temperatures came from. If you go down the bottom for the maximum temperatures, only 1, 2 degrees above normal. So it was those nighttime temperatures that really drug up the average the most. Not surprising considering how much humidity you have. When you have humid nights, it doesn't get as cool. In May, that's not really so much of an issue, but once we get into summertime, those hot, humid days where it just doesn't cool off at night can really impact crops. But again, in May, we're still cooling off. It's still above average, but we're still having cool evenings. On a whole, the state averaged 86.6 degrees, which is 4.3 degrees above normal, and was the 11th warmest May on record. And looking at the spring as a whole, the average temperature was 59.5 degrees, which was 4 degrees above normal, and the second warmest spring on record. The warmest being 2012, which that was the year of the drought, where we had March where it was just unbelievably warm. So And I believe that year really April and May were warm too, but nothing compared to how warm March was that year. Looking at the drought monitor, it's pretty quiet overall. Kentucky, you can see is all white. Just some scattered and normally dry areas across the eastern half of the U.S., really with the exception of down there in Florida. Even the western U.S., there's some drought there in New Mexico, Kansas, Texas, and then also up in Montana, Idaho, and Washington. But compared to where it has been the past few years, pretty quiet, man. And like I said, Kentucky, we are free of any type of drought or dryness. Not surprising. Looking at the comparison to what we saw last year, I'm sorry, not last year, compared to the past month. So looking back to the beginning of May to now, you can see a lot of improvements across the Midwest and up into the Upper Plains area. Really, the only area that's really seen a lot of degradation is down in Florida. There's been a dry spring for them. And zooming in on Kentucky, you see there's been improvement. We had some moderate droughts and abnormally dry in western Kentucky and again in southeastern Kentucky, but that has been eliminated after all the rain that we've had. Looking at stream flows, current stream flows are up top, and you can see a lot of greens, a lot of blues, some blacks indicating that it is the very top of the scale, 98th percentile. The only two orange popping up are on the Ohio River. So, but don't think that's going to be anything to concern about, especially with all that water and all these watersheds flowing into the Ohio. Um, Looking down at the 28-day average stream flows, again, lots of blues, greens. Um, One orange dot there in on the Red River there at Clay City, but if you look up at the current stream flows, it's in the above normal category. So they've gotten some rain here in the past day or two that's pushed up flow. So that 28-day average should be trending upward for them as well. But overall, just stream flows are doing great. Probably a little too great out in Western Kentucky where there has been some flooding, like we saw there on that picture in the beginning on the Green River there. Soil moisture, no surprise. Soil moisture is above normal across to the western and southern part of the state up into the bluegrass. And I'm actually surprised that there's not more blue up into it because I know in Scott County our soils are saturated. So and we're in the normal gray area. So this might be a little underplaying some of the soil moisture a little bit in areas. Um, and looking at some of the mesonet gauges, the top left there is the Warren County gauge. And again, you can see there in the middle, you can see that we had some rain in the first half, April, and it dried out. And we saw the surface soil moisture starting to dry out a little bit. And then May hit, and you can see just rain after rain after rain. The on the top right there, that is Graves County, and kind of see that it wasn't quite as dry out there in April, but you can see the up and down. And what's really impressive, this one is the top yellow line. That's your 40-inch soil moisture, and you can see where it got pushed up every time there was a rain event. You had some water filtering through, but for that trend to keep going up there in May, where it instead of bottoming out around 48, 49% soil moisture, it's now holding steady at 53, 54% soil moisture. So it's just showing just how super saturated that soil is. Looking down at the bottom left, Menifee County, you can see again, it's one of the like I said, quote unquote drier places in the state. Again, in April, you can see it kind of dried out a little bit. And now you've seen the surface soil moisture levels bump back up and staying high. And more importantly, that 20-inch soil moisture, you can see it never really quite faded. And that's your subsoil moisture was staying strong throughout the dry period in April. And bottom right, Lewis County, again, you see the dipping in April and doing great, and the 40-inch soil moisture holding strong. And again, like looking at Lewis County, even that dip in April, still only talking about 26 to 30% soil moisture. So that's, it's low compared to where it is now, but overall that's still pretty good. So while it was dry, there was still plenty of soil moisture left in the soils. On to storm reports, and I promise you the state of Kentucky is somewhere underneath all that. It has been a very, very active month. You can see all those tree icons there are denoting storm damage from thunderstorm winds. You can see some flooding. There are some hails buried in there somewhere. And then you also see those red boxes out in western and southern Kentucky denoting tornadoes. We've had quite a few tornadoes as well. Really, all this is from two different systems. One hit on May 7th and 8th, and the second one hit on May 26th. Um, so those two systems did quite a bit of damage across the state. I said May 7th and 8th, we had four confirmed tornadoes. And during that event, the Paducah National Weather Service issued 117 warnings. That's severe thunderstorms, tornado, and flash flood warnings. Prior to that, their one-day record was 71, so they just smashed it. And there was widespread wind and hail damage across the entire state, though. But the tornadoes were only those four tornadoes were out in western Kentucky. And then moving forward to May 26th, we had, it was really quite a crazy day. It started off with one line of storms pushing through that did a lot of wind damage, really across the entire state. Western Kentucky, Eastern Kentucky, everything in between. And we already had, even with that, there was hundreds of thousands of people without power. And then a second line came through around sunset in Western Kentucky, and that's where we had the tornado outbreak. We had 16 confirmed tornadoes across Western and Southern Kentucky, including two long track tornadoes. One was an EF3 that was 35 miles long, going from Eddiesville to out just south of Madisonville, taking an eerily close path to the tornado we saw in 2021. We'll talk about that in just a second. And then that was from a supercell, and that supercell, that tornado lifted when that supercell got caught up by the squall line. And then the embedded supercell in that squall line dropped another tornado that only reached EF1 strength, but it stayed on the ground for 31 miles, heading down through Butler and Warren counties. So that storm continued across southern Kentucky, with more tornado warnings, more damage across the Lake Cumberland area, and even into Bell and Harlan counties. And the picture on the right, that is the tornado, the EF3 tornado, as it was passing south of Fredonia, which is north of Princeton. So that tornado passed through between Princeton and Fredonia. Quite an impressive looking tornado there. Taking a look at some of the damage, the top left is straight line wind damage at Marina in Monticello on Lake Cumberland. If you haven't heard, Conley Bottom Resort, they've had a string of bad luck. They had damage from these storms. A couple of years ago, they had a big fire, and they've also had damage in the past few years from flooding. So they've had quite a bit of bad luck. So hopefully things quiet down for them for the next few years. On the top right is wind damage out in McLean County, and that's from the May 8th storm. Bottom left, that is straight line wind damage in Grayson County, and you can see, looks like it took out some siding, damaged the roof, and also flipped their RV. So straight line winds can do quite a bit of damage as well. So, everybody focuses on the tornadoes, which can do incredible amounts of damage, but straight line winds can also do damage, especially if you're living in a trailer, or you have trees around you. There was quite a bit of tree damage across the state with those winds on the 26th. And on the right is tornado damage from that's the EF long track storm that went through, or long track tornado that went through Butler and Warren counties, and that was in Warren County. See, the house there lost its roof, and that's only an EF1. So shows you the power of even a weaker tornado. So this is just comparing the path of the tornado from December 10th, 2021, the one that went through Mayfield and Princeton and Dawson Springs. And then you look at the tornado path on the one that was just on the 26th. And it was a much shorter path. This doesn't include Mayfield, and that tornado in December of 10th started out in Tennessee and moved through the purchase area west of the lakes, and then continued on to the right of the screen as well. But you can see here, this is Eddyville right here. This tornado started just outside of Eddyville, passed just north of Princeton. Here's Princeton here. So this is where the Kentucky UK Ag Research Center that got hit was right in this area. Dawson Springs is right here. So the poor community of Dawson Springs, you had one EF3, EF4 tornado go through here. Then you had an EF2, EF3 just north of town that went through the neighborhood of Charleston. And then you see, as this storm came to its end here, it actually followed almost the exact same path of the storm. So it's rare to get long track tornadoes in Kentucky. So to have two of them within 3.5 years of each other take almost the exact same path is pretty incredible. The good news is this past storm, it missed Eddyville, it missed Princeton, it missed downtown Dawson Springs, and then died out just before it got to this area here. This is I-69 right here. I'm blanking on the name of the towns here. This is Madisonville here, but died just before it reached some of these towns here. So luckily, this tornado went through some fairly rural areas. It still hit some houses, still did damage there. There was still one fatality just north of Dawson Springs here. But luckily it really missed the big urban population centers in that region. Looking at ag conditions, we've had actually a little too much rain in places. The corn crop and also tobacco being set is well behind schedule. If you look down at the bottom left here, normally the 5-year average corn planted would be at 91%, and last year we were at 95%. This year we're only at 79%. It's just been too muddy for some farmers to just get out in the field and plant. Same thing setting tobacco. Normally we should be at 51%. We're at 36%. Soybeans are doing good. Part of that's because a lot of soybeans haven't been planted yet. If you're doing double crop soybeans, you wouldn't. You're still waiting for the winter wheat to be harvested. So, and hopefully we will be drying out before that comes about. And the same thing with hay. There's not really a thing here, but hay is for that first cutting. Typically it's around Memorial Day, and there's been a lot of farmers who haven't been able to get out and cut yet. You got to cut it and let that hay sit out for a few days to dry out. And it's not just the amount of rain; it's just been the frequency of rain. That we just haven't had many weeks where you've had 3-4 days of dry weather where you can string together to get that hay cut and dried out and baled before it rains again. It's also having a negative impact on the crops that are planted. Some of the corn's growing in flooded fields, and it's just corn doesn't like that. You get root rot, and the plants basically drown. Also pasture and livestock. Cattle walking through the fields, especially around areas around ponds and feed areas, stuff just kicking up a lot of mud, tearing up the pasture, and just being in mud's not good for the cattle in general. So typically something you see in the winter, not as much this time of year, but it's just been so wet. We do need to dry out a little bit for them for the egg sector. Normally, it seems like it's the other way around. We're winning rain, but this time we're like, let's take a break from the rain a little bit. So looking ahead, we are coming out of El Nino, and it is pretty much dead, and we are already starting to see La Nina form up. And it's an all but certainty that we are going to see La Nina this fall and into the winter. And if you're keeping track at home, we had a triple dip La Nina. So it was three winters in a row of La Nina. And then last year I had an El Nino and now flipping right back to La Nina again. So it's been Enso's been very active. We haven't had a neutral year for several years now. So what that one thing that La Nina does in the summer is it allows for hurricane development in the Atlantic. It suppresses it in the Pacific, but in the Atlantic, it does kind of tends to cause trade winds to be a little lower, so there's less wind shear in the tropical Atlantic, combined with just how incredibly warm the Atlantic and the Gulf of Mexico is right now. They're forecasting a bumper crop of hurricanes, which for us, we haven't had a tropical system come up here in 2 years. So something we might have to deal with this year. While we don't want we don't want the Gulf Coast getting hit by hurricanes and stuff, they do usually bring us good rains, which is something we've sorely needed in the past 2 falls of drought conditions. So it might be something that helps prevent another fall drought from occurring this year. Looking at the quantitative forecast, precipitation forecast for the next 7 days, you can see not much in the way of rain. Maybe a little bit more down in Western Kentucky, along the south there and across Tennessee. But for most of the state, we're looking at less than 1/10 of an inch or less than 1/4 inch of rain across southern Kentucky. So like I said, we needed to dry out a little bit. And that's not something you hear me say a lot since I work with drought, but actually looking forward to having a little bit of a break from the rain. Looking at your 6 to 10 day outlooks, temperature wise, they're forecasting below normal temperatures for us. That bullseye really just south of Kentucky, but looks like we should be in a big ridge out west, bringing record heat to the western states, and then a big trough across the eastern states. And it's also going to bring dry weather. You can see the bullseye for below normal precipitation. You're going to have cool, dry air in place, so not much moisture for storms. Like I said, that's kind of what we really want. Not only is it going to be dry, but it's also not going to be hot. We should have something to look forward to. Looking up to 8 to 14 days, still starting to show us that the warm weather returning. Still got a bullseye below normal precipitation for our area, especially the western half of the state. Looking at for the outlook for June, equal chances for temperature. Not surprising considering they had that big bullseye of cold weather or cooler below normal temperatures across the eastern U.S. So they're not sure. Yeah, so going with equal chances, we may warm up enough to pull ourselves above normal, or we may not. But you see, western U.S. they're expecting above normal temperature where that big ridge is set up. As for precipitation, above normal precipitation, that bullseye is just south of us across the lower Mississippi Valley and stretching into Oklahoma and Texas. For us, equal chances. So really no great signal whether we're going to be wet or dry. So definitely chances that the second half of the month we get a little more precipitation. And looking at the seasonal outlook, this is for summer, June through August. Really, most of the country, they're predicting above normal temperatures, but again, especially out there in the Four Corners region, and then also in New England. And you can see that tongue of equal chances and lesser degree of certainty coming down out of the high plains and into even part of the Ohio Valley. Then looking at precipitation for us, they got a little bit of confidence that we're going to be wet and really the whole southern U.S. So just looking at these two maps, it tells me that kind of what they're predicting is a big ridge out in the like we're seeing coming up right now, a big ridge of high pressure out west and then troughs coming in to the eastern U.S. That might be the theme that they're expecting for the summer. Which again, I wouldn't mind if we have good rain amounts and cooler temperatures are not as hot as we have been for the summer. I would really be happy if we didn't have a summer with drought this year. I'm looking at the monthly drought outlook. You can see they're nice and quiet across the eastern U.S. Expecting drought to persist down in Florida for the month of June. And any development they're expecting was out in the Four Corners region and up in the northeastern U.S. So not surprising they're not expecting any drought to be developing, which would be shocking considering just how wet we are right now. Significant fire outlook. Again, nothing showing up here. Only areas for fire are out in the desert Southwest and Florida. And California showing up green, which is not something you see a lot of, but I'm sure that's a good thing. Though I believe I heard on the news that there was a big fire out in California, out by San Francisco. So that's kind of a little surprising that they have it in green with a big fire going on out there. Just a plug. I know Matt Dixon has talked about this in the past few webinars. It's a new weather alert for agriculture and weather forecast that's put out by the UK Ag Weather Center. There's the QRL code for iOS. Believe they do have it for Android as well. So I have it on my phone. Nice getting updates when there's weather moving in, and just being able to look and see what conditions are. So go ahead and apply for it. And as Matt likes to plug, there are no ads associated with it, so you don't have to worry about that. So overall, May was a warm and very wet month. That wet weather did erase any remaining dryness and drought that we've had that's kind of been lingering since last fall and winter. But unfortunately, with all that rain, we did have several rounds of severe weather that brought damage to the state from both tornadoes and straight line winds. Corn and hay cuttings are behind schedule due to the excessive precipitation. And we are saying goodbye to El Nino and hello to La Nina. And right now, the Climate Prediction Center is forecasting above normal temperatures and above normal precipitation for the summer, though we are expecting to see at least a short-term break from the wet weather. And like just another reminder, the next month's webinar will not be on the 4th, it will be on the 11th. And if you have any questions or want to or anything, feel free to contact Jerry Brodsky at the Western Kentucky University, the Kentucky Climate Center, Matt Dixon at the UK Ag Weather Center, or myself. If you do see drought impacts, or this time of year, right now you're seeing flooding impacts, hop on to the Hydrologic Impact Reporter and put those in. It's definitely helpful to see those, whether it's drought or flooding related. And that's all that I have. So if anybody has any questions or comments, I'll click on the thing right here. And Ron shared the link to the Android version. And Ron also saw the Northern Lights, which I knew because I saw that on Twitter. But anybody else have any questions or comments?
Yeah, Chip, this is Shane over at Kentucky Mesonet Climate Center.
Yeah.
Just a couple of little footnotes about the rainfall for Paducah. On May 8th, they had a daily rainfall record of 1.46, and then they had another daily rainfall record again set on the 26th that was 2.6 inches. Incidentally, we had severe weather outbreaks on both occasions, and Paducah tied for their fourth warmest May all time. Also, on the subject of hydrologic issues, I drove to Hopkinsville for an interview a couple of days ago and noticed a lot of standing water in the cornfields along the way, particularly in Logan and Todd counties. I have not heard from Joanna Coles, who's the Warren County Extension Agent for Agriculture here this week, but I've got to believe that there might be some replanting going on, either that or some farmers are unfortunately going to take a loss there with waterlogged corn.
Yeah. Definitely. I imagine there's probably going to be some replanting. Hopefully, it's still early enough that they can replant and not just take a loss. But yeah, that's definitely going to be a concern. Question from Cliff Goff about where does the weather app source its weather data? I do not know, and I do not believe Matt is on. So might be something to hold off and ask next month, or I can ask him next time I talk to him and send you an email about that. But yeah, I don't, off the top of my head, I don't know.
Chip, well, Cliff may probably knows a lot more than I do on this, but a couple of days ago, I noticed that one of the models was one of the longer term models had a hurricane forming in the Gulf and making a beeline to Kentucky, roughly the middle of June. I don't know if that's still in the forecast, but they are predicting an early start to the hurricane season, and the Gulf temperatures are pretty warm right now, abnormally warm. So it wouldn't surprise me if something developed down there. And of course, we don't need the rain now, so I guess the longer it holds off, the better.
Now, I've been watching that because I'm going to be down on the Atlantic coast, and it seems like the models can't make up their mind on that one because one day it has it sitting over Florida and then kind of drifting up the East Coast, and then the next run it sends it running into the Gulf. So that'll be interesting to see what happens with that. I don't think they like Cliff might know more, but yeah, it doesn't seem like that it has the models have a really feel for what it's going to do yet.
Hmm.
Thanks for thinking of me there, thinking highly about how much I know, but unfortunately, I don't know much about that. But you piqued my interest. So I'm going to look into it.
That's one thing about those longer term models. One day it'll be there, and next day it'll be gone, and then it'll flip back. And
Yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty once you go out that far in those models.
Well, since I'll be down there, I can say with certainty it's probably going to run up the East Coast next week.
well, another thing that you touched on were the warm temperatures we've had the last, I don't know how many months, but it'll be interesting to see if maybe we can dip below average in June, if our little cool spell will last long enough. I saw we had a 90 in the long term, maybe 7 days out, but it'd be nice to have a month of June below average.
Yeah, that would be nice. If we could stay wet, it might if the second half turns wet, it might keep us cool. If not, I'll take it. Though I'm not going to be here to enjoy it.
Well, it's interesting too that despite all the rain, it's only the sixth wettest May. But as you pointed out, the Western climate division is definitely their wettest. But it just
Yeah.
shows how wet some of those other Mays were.
Now you keep in mind, what was it 2010? We had the Derby Day floods on the 1st of May. That that was a big time flooding event, especially down in Bowling Green.
Hmm. Yep.
So that May can be extremely wet. All right, well, guess if nobody has any other questions, guess we will go ahead and sign off. And I thank you for everybody for attending, and we will see you here next month.
Yep. Thanks, Chip. Thanks a lot.
All right,
Yep. Bye, y'all.
Thank you, Chip.
bye.